Imagine waking up to a sky darkened by an unrelenting swarm. A living storm, millions, sometimes billions, moving as one. Within hours, fields are stripped bare, trees left skeletal, entire landscapes transformed into wastelands. This isn't a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. This is real. This is the unstoppable force of locusts. They descend without warning, devouring everything in their path. Ancient civilizations feared them, modern science struggles to contain them, and when they arrive, destruction follows. But how do they form? Why do they suddenly explode in numbers? And could we be facing the biggest locust plague in history? Stay with us as we uncover the terrifying science behind these creatures and the real-life disasters they've caused. Locusts are not just large grasshoppers. They are a unique kind of insect capable of one of the most dramatic transformations in the animal kingdom. In their normal state, locusts are solitary creatures, avoiding contact with others of their kind and living relatively harmless lives. However, under certain environmental conditions, they undergo a radical shift. This transformation, known as gregarization, is triggered when they experience overcrowding due to food shortages or rapid population growth. When forced into close contact with other locusts, their entire biology changes. The transformation is driven by serotonin, a neurotransmitter commonly associated with mood regulation in humans. When serotonin levels surge in their brains, locusts become hyperactive, more social, and, most importantly, develop an insatiable appetite. Their bodies change in both color and structure, shifting from a dull greenish-brown to a bright yellow and black pattern, a signal of their newfound swarming state. Their wings become stronger, their endurance improves, and they prepare for mass migration. This process can happen within hours, setting the stage for what comes next. In this new phase, locusts become highly aggressive, forming massive groups that behave like a single entity. A locust swarm can grow to include billions of individuals, stretching for miles in every direction. These insects coordinate their movements through a combination of visual cues and pheromones, allowing them to function as a highly synchronized and efficient swarm. Their numbers become so large that they can overwhelm entire landscapes, consuming everything in their path. The damage they cause is astonishing. A single locust can eat its own weight in food every day. That might not seem like much, but when multiplied by millions or billions, the impact is catastrophic. A swarm covering just 1 square kilometer can consume as much food as 35,000 people in a single day. This level of destruction is why locust outbreaks have historically been among the most feared natural disasters. The most dangerous species, the desert locust, Schistocerca gregaria, is known for its extreme swarming ability and its capacity to travel vast distances. It primarily affects regions across Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, but under the right conditions, locust plagues can spread far beyond their normal range. In some cases, swarms have even crossed oceans, with locusts from Africa reaching as far as South America. Locust outbreaks are notoriously difficult to predict and control. Scientists are working on advanced monitoring techniques, including satellite tracking and climate modeling, to anticipate when conditions will favor swarming. But despite these efforts, when a swarm forms, stopping it is nearly impossible. The sheer scale of the destruction makes locust plagues one of the most challenging natural disasters to manage. Locusts have been terrorizing human civilizations for thousands of years. Their ability to decimate crops and cause famine has made them one of the most feared natural forces in history. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs depict devastating locust swarms, and they were even recorded in the Bible as one of the 10 plagues. These biblical accounts describe a nightmare scenario, an endless black cloud of insects that blotted out the sun and stripped every green plant from the land. One of the most infamous locust swarms in history occurred in the United States in 1875. Known as Albert Swarm, this was the largest recorded swarm in North America, covering an area of 198,000 square miles, larger than the entire state of California. The swarm contained trillions of locusts, and when they descended on farmland, they left nothing behind. Crops, clothing, wooden fences, everything was devoured. The economic toll was devastating, forcing many farmers into bankruptcy. In modern times, one of the worst locust plagues struck Africa and the Middle East in 2020. Billions of locusts spread across multiple countries, devouring crops and triggering a food crisis that put millions of people at risk of starvation. The situation was so severe that governments launched emergency control operations, deploying helicopters, drones, and thousands of workers armed with pesticides. But despite their best efforts, the swarms continued to grow, driven by unusual weather patterns linked to climate change. A lesser-known but equally devastating swarm occurred in China in the 13th century during the reign of Kublai Khan. The locusts ravaged entire provinces, leading to widespread famine. The Mongol ruler was forced to deploy vast resources to combat the infestation, but the insects proved nearly unstoppable. Historical records describe entire villages being abandoned as people fled the advancing swarms, unable to protect their food supplies. Another terrifying outbreak took place in Australia in 1915. Farmers in Queensland watched helplessly as locusts blackened the skies and consumed every crop in their path. The destruction was so severe that the Australian government had to introduce emergency pest control laws, some of which are still in place today. Despite over a century of advancements in pest control, Australia continues to battle locust outbreaks regularly. These swarms remind us that, despite all our technological advancements, nature still holds the power to devastate entire civilizations. When locusts appear in full force, even modern science struggles to contain their destruction. Locusts are not just a threat to crops and farmers, they are one of the most devastating forces in nature, capable of collapsing entire ecosystems. When a swarm arrives, it consumes every bit of vegetation in its path, leaving behind a barren wasteland. This mass destruction disrupts the natural food chain, impacting not only plants but also animals that rely on them for survival. Grazing animals, from livestock to wild herbivores, find themselves without food, triggering a ripple effect that extends up to larger predators. One of the most severe consequences of locust swarms is soil degradation. With plants gone, the soil loses its structure and becomes vulnerable to erosion. Rain washes away the topsoil, making it nearly impossible for plants to regrow. In many cases, these areas turn into desert-like landscapes, leading to long-term environmental damage. This process, known as desertification, can last for decades, making it incredibly difficult for local communities to recover. Beyond agriculture and plant life, locusts disrupt water sources. Without vegetation to absorb and retain moisture, rainfall runs off too quickly, leading to water shortages. Rivers and lakes dry up, further stressing both wildlife and human populations. In some cases, locust waste and decaying carcasses also contaminate water supplies, increasing the spread of disease. This can turn an already dire situation into a full-scale humanitarian crisis. Locust swarms also impact weather patterns on a local scale. When they consume vast amounts of vegetation, they alter the natural balance of heat absorption and moisture retention. Without plants, the ground absorbs more heat, contributing to rising temperatures in affected areas. This creates a feedback loop, where increased heat and dryness create even more favorable conditions for future locust outbreaks. The economic consequences of locust plagues are staggering. Millions, sometimes billions, of dollars in crops are lost, pushing food prices to extreme levels. Farmers lose their livelihoods, countries face food shortages, and in some cases, international aid becomes the only option to prevent mass starvation. Locust outbreaks are particularly devastating in developing regions, where agriculture is a primary source of income and food security is already fragile. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of locust outbreaks is their unpredictability. While scientists have made progress in tracking swarm movements, predicting their formation remains extremely difficult. A single outbreak can start with just a few locusts breeding in a remote area, and before authorities can act, it turns into a full-scale disaster. And with climate change creating more extreme weather patterns, the risk of larger and more frequent outbreaks is only increasing. For centuries, humans have battled locust plagues using every method imaginable: fire, water, poisons, and even military intervention. Yet, despite all efforts, stopping a swarm remains one of the most difficult challenges in pest control. One of the most widely used methods today is aerial pesticide spraying, where planes release chemical agents over breeding grounds and active swarms. While somewhat effective, this method comes with major downsides, including environmental pollution and harm to non-target species. In recent years, scientists have been exploring biological control methods, searching for ways to disrupt the locust life cycle without damaging the ecosystem. One promising approach involves using a specialized fungus called Metarhizium acridum, which infects and kills locusts while leaving other insects unharmed. Some studies have shown that targeting locust populations with this fungus early in their development can prevent outbreaks before they escalate. However, the challenge is deploying these biological controls at the right time and on a large enough scale. Another strategy focuses on tracking and predicting swarms before they become unmanageable. Advanced satellite imaging and artificial intelligence are being used to monitor locust breeding grounds, analyzing environmental conditions to anticipate when an outbreak might occur. By identifying high-risk areas in advance, authorities can take action before locusts have a chance to form massive swarms. However, even with these advancements, locusts remain highly unpredictable, and swarms can form suddenly in unexpected locations. Some regions have turned to natural predators as a potential solution. Birds, frogs, and certain wasp species are known to feed on locusts, but their impact is limited due to the sheer scale of a locust outbreak. In some cases, researchers have tried introducing predator species to control locust populations, but this method has yet to prove effective on a large scale. The sheer speed at which locusts reproduce and swarm makes it nearly impossible for natural predators to keep up. One of the most unconventional solutions proposed is harvesting locusts for human consumption. In some cultures, locusts are already considered a delicacy, rich in protein and nutrients. In Uganda, Kenya, and parts of the Middle East, fried or roasted locusts are sold in markets. Some researchers suggest that commercializing locust harvesting could provide an economic incentive to reduce swarm populations. However, collecting and processing locusts on a large enough scale to make a real impact remains a logistical challenge. Ultimately, the battle against locusts is far from over. With climate change increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme weather conditions, such as heavy rains followed by droughts, the perfect breeding conditions for locusts are becoming more common. If humanity wants to prevent future plagues, a combination of early detection, targeted biological controls, and innovative pest management strategies will be necessary. Otherwise, we may continue to see these insect invasions destroy crops, economies, and ecosystems for generations to come. Locusts are one of the most destructive forces on the planet, capable of altering entire landscapes, causing famines, and devastating economies. Their outbreaks have shaped human history, and with climate change altering global weather patterns, the threat of massive locust plagues is far from over. But could there be hope for controlling them? Scientists are exploring new ways to prevent outbreaks before they begin, and some cultures have even turned to eating locusts as a solution. But will that be enough? Or are we doomed to face the wrath of these swarming destroyers again and again? What do you think? Would you ever try eating a locust? And what's the scariest insect you've ever encountered? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the destructive power of locusts, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next terrifying exploration of nature's most dangerous creatures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.